Warm welcome to everyone to my presentation, which is based on the DCT-based fusion of variable exposure images for high dynamic range imaging. So myself and my PhD advisor, Dr. DJ Pete, we are from Datta Mege College of Engineering, the Electronics Engineering Department from Airoli, New Bombay, which is known as Navi Mumbai in Maharashtra, India. So basically, we can see the set of 6 multiple exposure images, which we see here. So what is the actual problem which we have addressed is, basically you can see the light conditions are not the same throughout the image. So as you observe this around this image, so if you just have a look, you can see that the images are having some of the regions highlighted properly and some of the regions are underexposed regions and some of the regions are overexposed regions. So these are basically, if there is underexposure or if there is overexposure, we tend to lose the image data. Now, why is it so? That means we are either becoming too much bright or we are becoming too much dark. So the original details of the image, like these edges and all, so you can see here this vertical edge here, this is not too much prominent here. Again, if the light is ambient, you get the proper edge. Again, if it is here, it is the middle value, so it is okay. If you again keep on increasing the exposure, these regions becomes more bright and the brighter regions will get dissolved into the white background. So like that it happens. So this is the actual problem. Now, when we go for this kind of addressing of this problem using the camera response function, we could address it using the high dynamic range image formats. So the basic thing of the format was .hdr kind of thing. So which is basically a kind of a format wherein this display device itself, what we are seeing on our screen, it is not able to support that kind of a format. Not even the print media will be able to support this kind of a format. So then what to do, keeping in account to this format? That means the reason is you are telling that the image has to be natural. It has to be captured with the ideal exposure setting of the camera. Then for a dark light, the exposure settings could not be adjusted more. Therefore, some regions get submerged, or for a bright setting, again, it cannot be closed more. So the bright regions also get devolved into the background. So overall, you get some kind of image which is like this after you make the HDR format of that image. That means ideally you have captured the original details of the pixel values, but you are not able to represent this onto the normal display devices or the print media or the screen or whatever we have. So basically we go for what is called as a tone mapping operation, wherein I map the tone to make it basically visible in this background. So the basic kind of a tone mapping can be kind of a log operator, a simple log operator, which can be used as a tone mapping operator. Then there is a lot of research into the tone mapping, which is done as a part of the literature survey, which includes the tone mapping operators like the Reinhardt, the bilateral filter itself was a tone mapping operator. Okay, and a lot of things, lot of filters and a lot of like in the sense techniques to basically map the tone. That means you are mapping the tone from a HDR format to a normal format or a normal JPEG, which could be visible in the normal print media or a normal display device, or else it is not possible to display. Then basically this is say about the HDR imaging. That is basically you can see that the traditional exposure fusion, the real world scene produces much greater dynamic range than 2 orders of magnitude. The human visual system is capable of adapting to orders of magnitude. That means we as a normal human being with our rods and cones will be able to adapt and see all the regions properly until unless it is a mirage kind of thing and you get something embedded, or if it is something in severe dark and we are not able to see that region, because the perception of the human eye is basically more than the display device or the print media or whatever we have. Right? So we will be able to feel it actually through our eyes also. Then within a scene, the visual system is able to adapt to orders of magnitude, but that is it possible for the device to adapt? So ideally that can be one solution, that you make the hardware adapt to the magnitude of the HDR format which is given, or you make the image itself into a mapped value which will be actually represented in the hardware. That means it can be either a paper or it can be either a CRT display or a LCD display. Okay, so basically you can adapt up to 2 orders of magnitude in the CRTs and the LCDs. Now HDR images are basically scene mapped rather than to the display devices, and hence their fidelity is higher. Now, what does this mean? This means that the scene has to be captured. So the details of the scene has to be captured rather than bothering about making the image display onto the display device, right? So originally, that is why the fidelity of the HDR images are higher. So if we just bother about the display device and then adjust the exposure setting for capturing the images, then we may not capture the actual details present in the scene. So that is a problem, right? So now going ahead, HDR imaging is basically used to obtain the complete dynamic range with a camera of a limited dynamic range. So what you are doing is you are obtaining a multiple exposure image set. So taking into some compromise of the display device as well as the mapping of the scenes to the entire thing. So you are basically taking a set of images with different exposure settings, so that in one set of image, right from the dark to the white, some of the regions underexposed, some of the regions properly exposed, and some of the regions overexposed. Then basically each image is linearized with the inverse camera response function, right? So every such camera is present with a lens, and then actually it is having some response function where it maps the tone of the outside world into its pixel value, right? So there is an inverse camera response function wherein each image gets linearized, and finally the image is obtained using the weighted pixel method. So actually you weight each pixels, right? You map it to a straight line of the inverse camera response function, and then get the proper image displayed onto the display device. But originally what happens is that when you capture such images, every such image is afflicted with the noise from the acquisition process. So when I am doing a HDR format, that time itself, first of all, the under and overexposed itself is acting like a noise, right? So exposure setting do not allow me to go beyond some lower limit and above some upper limit. That is one limitation of the hardware. And moreover, this itself is some kind of a noise which is there, which can be modeled. And moreover, the image itself is afflicted with the noise from the acquisition process. And basically, when you do a weighted averaging, the SNR of the weighted averaged image is more higher than the individual images because of the weighted averaging. So it is just like you are having a linear time response function or a LTI system, linear time invariant system, wherein there are coefficients given to each of these pixels, and the signal is a 2D signal, and you are giving weighted average to each of these pixels, and then taking out from the average of the image set, you are taking out the expression for the image, like you are mapping x of t minus 1, right, x of t minus 2, so on and so forth. So you are captured, suppose say up to t minus 10. Then you are multiplying a1 into x of t minus 1 plus a2 into x of t minus 2, so on and so forth up to x of t minus 9 or t minus 10, depending on 10 or 11 images you have captured, and then do a weighted averaging. So basically this behaves like what? Simple moving average filter or autoregressive filter, or you can just map it to some kind of a filtering operation, or you can map it to some kind of a transform operation. So this is one of the motivations behind this work. So now traditional exposure fusion. Now how did basically Sir Tom Mertens solve this problem? Was by using a Laplacian pyramid, right? So he basically first decomposed the image using the Laplacian pyramid so that you get the pyramidal decomposition. Then he has given three such parameters like the saturation, contrast, and the well exposuredness, right? So the basic reason is we are going to actually bypass the route followed now. So what was the route followed in the previous years before the exposure fusion came? They used to go for the HDR format using the HDR capture device and the HDR LCDs, etc., special purpose hardware. Then they used to do the tone mapping operation and come back to the normal world. Now what they do from the exposure fusion era, the images are basically decomposed using the Laplacian pyramid. You get a set of multiple exposure images, and then you obtain the weight maps which are using the which are decomposed again using the Gaussian pyramid. Okay, of course the dimensions of this Laplacian and the Gaussian has to map actually correctly, and then you say have three such parameters like I said, a1 into x of t1 plus a2 into x of t minus 1 plus a2 into x of t minus 2 plus a3 into x of t minus 3. So like that, if suppose each of these a's are again three parameters like saturation, contrast, and well exposuredness, then I will get a composite weighting function which is again weighed using a Gaussian pyramid, and the image decomposed using a Laplacian pyramid, and I get a weighted averaging. So this is the basic idea in a crude way of the traditional exposure fusion. Now, when going through this study, like we faced the following issues. That is, basically there are vast differences in the exposure settings, right? Because when you go from the underexposed to the overexposed image, as you see here, so there are vast differences in the exposure setting of this image and with this image. So basically what will happen is there is some kind of a seam which are observed. So when you composite these images, sometimes you may get seamed blending. That means the blending will not be seamless. Then basically you can observe that there is some blur observed in the image after you do the exposure fusion. So that is just due to the fact that you are multiplying it with a Gaussian and the Laplacian pyramid. Okay, so you get some kind of a blur, and then so that means you are getting a blurred version of the image, and moreover you keep on increasing the order of the Laplacian pyramid to solve this blur problem and the visible seam problem. But that is just like going to the higher order and decomposing the image. So there is some maximum limit or the minimum limit to which image can be reduced to the minimum size, right? So everything has got a minimum and a maximum limit in the physically realizable system. So normally that is the way. So basically there is some limit to go for the higher order, what you call the Laplacian pyramid, and you get visible seams and some kind of a blur which is observed. So now, and moreover, you observe there is some specific observation that these things are done in the spatial domain. That means we have studied the transforms in image processing, and basically we have studied the filters in image processing. Okay, so now filters are nothing but working out in the spatial domain, but multiplying the image with some coefficient such that the noise at each pixel is being sucked out. But what does the transform do? Again, the transform, when going through the study, we can observe that even if we don't provide the parameters like the saturation, contrast, and the well exposuredness in this work of ours, the transform coefficient itself are enabled enough to detect the quality of the image. That is why we see that the discrete cosine transform is widely used for a JPEG compression, right? That is a wide use of a discrete cosine transform. And when you look at a normal decompressed image or uncompressed image, decompressed is after compressing, uncompressed is something which is in the raw format. So if you go for a raw image or a decompressed image and the compressed image, you can observe that there is not much difference in the quality of the compressed image. So ideally the transform coefficient are enough, are like in the sense capable enough to basically identify the what you call the quality of the pixel. So that is what is the conjecture, right? The transform coefficient are able to identify the quality of the pixel. That means there is some fun behind knowing the transform coefficient and basically like extracting the saturation or extracting the contrast or extracting the what you call the well exposuredness of that particular pixel is some kind of activity which can be avoided if we deal well with the transform coefficient itself. So now we went across with some kind of a drawbacks of the fusion which is observed in the spatial domain. That is basically there are brightness changes are vast around the edges. Then if you go for a LPF version and subtract it from the original image, you get the Laplacian pyramid based decomposition. Then pixels with higher frequency, that is higher rate of change of illuminations, are retained. That means when you subtract the LPF made of the Laplacian pyramid and then get the image out of it, the pixels with the higher rate of change of illumination are retained. But the reduced number of pixels are obtained by subsampling the edge pixels. Again, you are reducing the number of pixels because you are going for a Laplacian pyramid decomposition. Now, the subsampling, it provides the disadvantage of approximating the edge pixel with the highly varying brightness pixel, because what happens is that every time you subtract the image with the LPF version using the Laplacian pyramid, the higher rate of change of pixels will be retained. And then when you want to retain the size of the image, you will do the nearest neighborhood approximation. That means you will assign the pixel the value which is next to it. Okay, and that next pixel is again a highly varying brightness edge pixel. So you get vast brightness changes around the edges. And the weight maps also depict the severe variations, right? So originally your image does not look to be smooth. So it is as good as observing the different parts of the image in different sections. That means you are creating walls around the edges in the image. So even if the image looks to be more crispy or something like that, in the case of the exposure fusion, it does not seemingly look natural. So that is something which we have used for the comparison in our work. So the weight maps also depict the severe variations, and there is degradation in the contrast, and there is a low frequency brightness change in the pixels, which are the contrast degradation occurs because the low frequency brightness change pixels are not retained, and they are not edge pixels. Now, the initial steps which are performed for the low pass filtering to get a low pass filter version and subtracting to get the Laplacian decomposition are achieved by the one-step DCT transform itself. So this is one gain. When I do a DCT transform of the image, I just map the steps of passing it through a LPF and subtracting the Laplace, subtracting the LPF version from the original image to get the Laplacian decomposition. Then the next step of finding the pixel coefficient for the compositing purpose is basically given by assigning the uniform weights, because each pixel is assigned the uniform weights and there is an averaging operation observed. And basically you can observe a seamless blending, which is the results where the results are comparable with the standard exposure fusion based approach and the non-subsampled shear-led transform based approach. So now the problem statement is basically stating that the work deals with the novel approach for the exposure fusion in the transform domain, that is a DCT domain, by exploring the denoising capabilities of the various transform. And the multiple exposure fusion problem is mapped to the image denoising problem in the transform domain, where there are various markers to distinguish between the well exposed and the ill exposed pixels. So the literature survey went on like this for this work. We went ahead to first study the spatial domain methods, which included the exposure fusion. Then we went ahead to note what is called as the camera response function based approach. That is basically the approach used by the tone mapping and other things. The camera response linearization function, which I mentioned in the first two slides, and then went for the tone mapping based approach. So that is how this has progressed ahead. So now this is basically a transform based approach, which I am just so we can go for when we go for the transform, the first thing which comes to our mind is the wavelet transform, where a lot of universities have courses related to wavelets. There is the most famous transform. So there are some drawbacks with respect to that. That is, the wavelets, they fail to capture the geometric regularity along the singularities of the surface because of the isotropic support. That means they lack the directional support, which is provided by the shearlets or the non-subsample shearlets, etc. Then we go for the curvelets, wherein they are not built directly in the discrete domain and they do not provide a multi-resolution representation. So you have to forego the multi-resolution decomposition, the MRA analysis, when you go for the curvelets. And when you go for the contourlets, they are better than the curvelets. They have the directional feature, but they lead to some artifacts in the denoising and the compression part. And when you go for the bandlets requires the extensive computation. So now, what are the current trends in basically image enhancement? So when I said I map it to a denoising problem, I go for the spatial domain. So you can do a grayscale transformation, like a simple multiplication of the brightness value with some kind of a scaling function. You can go for the unsharp masking, which we study in the image processing in the university level. Then the most famous of our problems in all the image processing subjects is the histogram equalization. That is, you equalize the pixels across all the gray levels. Okay. So the process of detailed information such as image edge texture is often not satisfactory. That is, it is not showing a good improvement with respect to the texture preserving nature. That means the texture does not get a special attention when you go for a what you call the histogram based approach. And when you go for a frequency domain based approach, it is prone to carry noise forward to the enhanced image. So that is the weighing of the things, that is either spatial domain and the frequency domain. Okay. So now why the discrete cosine transform? So the discrete cosine transform is basically used in the JPEG compression. It is basically a block-based approach, and the DCT exhibits the unitary property. It is similar to the Karhanen low transform. It has a great energy compaction, efficiency, and rate distortion. So you can represent the pixel value, that is VKN, from the in the transform domain as 1 by square root of n, okay, where it is a n by n transform matrix for k is equals to 0 to n minus 1, and for k equal to 0 to n minus k between 0 to n minus 1 and n between 0 and n minus 1, you can write Vkn as square root of 2 by root n into cos of pi 2n plus 1k divided by 2n. So this is the expression for the transform. But the properties of the DCTs are, DCT is not a real part of the unitary discrete Fourier transform, right? So you may have the orthogonal Gram-Schmidt procedure, and someone might argue that the Fourier tree series went ahead and became the Fourier transform for the periodic signals, and just if we extract the real part of the Fourier transform or the Fourier transform or the Fourier series, will we get the DCT? But it is not so. Then basically DCT is a real and orthogonal transform. It is a fast transform. So it is a unique transform in its own way, right? That's what I want to say. So then excellent energy compaction efficiency is seen, and the basis vectors of the DCTs are eigenvectors of the symmetric tridiagonal matrix, and the DCT is very similar, close to the Karhanen law, but not close to the discrete Fourier. Okay, so that is what is observation. Now, if we say the distribution of the 2D block DCT coefficients, the coefficients are of value to us. So it has some evolution like this in the literature, like Pratt in 1978, Sir Pratt, he carried out the earlier work on the DCT coefficients, and he said that the DC coefficients are Rayleigh distributed, okay, and the AC coefficients are Gaussian distributed, okay. So that's what I am saying. When you go for a weighted blending using the Gaussian nature itself, so this is some conjecture which he has proposed. Then in 1979, Tester and Murakami, Hattori and Memoto 1982 indicated that AC coefficients are Laplacian and DC coefficients are Gaussian. So what I want to get through the exposure fusion approach, I am getting it through a one-step DCT transform. So these are some hints wherein we were like motivated to go for the DCT transform. Then Reininger and Gibson asserted that DC coefficients follow Gaussian and AC coefficients follow Laplacian. So there were a lot of arguments and things and experimentation going on. Then again, it evolved out that the multiple modes, and you can find the probability mass function. Okay, they perform the Kolmogorov-Smirnov KS test on a 256 by 256 8-bit PCM grayscale image and determine the best fit for the different PMFs, because people are coming ahead that this is Gaussian, that is Laplacian, or this is Laplacian, that is Gaussian. So they went ahead and performed an experiment to find out the actually best fit probability mass function, what could satisfy it the best. Then when you do the result of this Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, it is concluded that the AC block DCT coefficients follow a Laplacian distribution. So it is good for us that we could get a Laplacian distribution using the AC coefficients of the DCT transform. So now that is how the steps involved are basically in our algorithm. I will just state it. So you first perform the DCT transform of all the images in the image stack. Then the DCT coefficients of all the images are averaged out to obtain the resultant final image in the transform domain, okay, such that each of the corresponding pixels are summed out, and the total images, number of images in the image stack, it is divided by the total number of images in the image stack. Then after you obtain this sum of products, I would say the SOP equations involving all the images in the image stack, there is an inverse DCT transform which is performed to obtain the fused result. So we can note that the pixels have equal prominence and equal weights, and they are assigned to all the pixels which are captured in the transform domain, and the transform coefficients are empowered enough to give prominence in their luma value and chroma values according to the exposure settings. Okay, so it does justice to the exposure setting by taking care of the luma and the chroma values, the transform coefficients. So these are some of the approaches with which our transform based approach is compared with: the Savitzky-Golay filter based, the Ashik-Min tone mapping, Banterley, then bilateral filter based approach by Shanmuga and Bruce et al. Then Liszczynski logarithmic, Mertens is the approach which is exposure fusion, then Reinhard, and the NSST based approach, which was again one of our works in the previous, it was presented in one journal. SN Computer Science, and this is the method in this paper. So you can see these variable exposure images which are there here, and I obtain the results as follows. So you can see here the kth image is the image obtained in our paper. So it is just having its quality map to all these things. Okay. So here you get some kind of effect in the NSST based approach. So this is more improvised. You get these artifacts here. You can see the cursor moving here, and here you just have the smoothing observed here in all these things. Okay. And it is comparable to the bilateral filter based approach and the Savitzky-Golay filter based approach, and a lot of other techniques which are present in the literature. Similar results were observed with the Windows images. So these are the multiple exposure Windows images. So you can see here the observed approach. So these provide the similar results to the comparable to the exposure fusion and the Savitzky-Golay and other state-of-the-art approaches which are present without the blurring and the lack of loss in the contrast. Then you can observe these results for the variable exposure door image set, which is observed like this. So you see the results here. Again, this image is the image obtained as a consolidated composite image from our approach. It is comparable to all these approaches. Okay, you get the inner details also represented in this. Then the garage image set, again, you can see here the multiple exposure image set, and you get the consolidated, the composite garage image in the approach shown by us, and it is comparable to other approaches which are there. So these are the facts and figures which are there. So it's providing PSNR of around 67 for the house image, 71 for the door image, and the minimum mean square error is comparatively okay to be considered. Okay, it is less when compared with other approaches. The SSIM index is again a very good index is obtained, that is 0.9881, 0.9893, and the Q factor, which is some kind of a measurement factor for the exposure fusion, right, which is obtained as a visual difference predictor. Like what is the difference between the original image and the image obtained by the compositing value. So that is some measurement factor for the multiple variable exposure images. So you got obtained composite image obtained, that is coming out with 98, around 98, and here it is again 98.2925. Similar values are obtained for the window image, and you can get the PSNR of 71, 70, and IMMSE is less, and SSIM is good, and the Q factor is also good. So higher value is desirable for the Q factor for the algorithm to be more effective. So we have developed a method for performing the fusion of multiple exposure images using the DCT based transform domain approach, and studied the results. And the results favor the use of the DCT based multiple exposure image fusion for the high dynamic range imaging problem. So I would like to thank everyone for a patient listening. Are there any questions?